we're going into a season where those blurred lines and that compromised faith, it's not going to work anymore. The line in the sand is being drawn. It is thicker than ever, and you're gonna have to come to a point, and I had to come to this point where it's like, choose. I have a decision to make. Like, what am I actually willing to give up for the sake of walking with Jesus? Am I willing to truly count the cost? Salvation is free, yes, but sanctification, it costs something. What's up, y'all? I am johnnanichelle. Welcome back to the channel. I am a faith and lifestyle content creator, and today we're getting into it. We are getting into it. And what I mean by that is I am taking you all behind the scenes of what has been the hardest year of my life, an intense season where I really feel like the Lord was working a lot of things out in me. It's the reason why I was kind of absent from this platform for so long, and even on other social media platforms where typically I'm very open and I share a lot and I love to share what God is teaching me. I was very private and really just going through so much behind the scenes, and today I'm going to talk about what I felt like God was showing me through this past year and what I've learned from that, because I think it's one thing to go through something and then to come out on the other side of it, but I don't believe that we just go through things for ourselves. I believe that the season that I was walking through this past year, you may be watching right now, and it may be something that you have gone through or are going through, or you're like, I have been in that place, I've been in that dark season, or I've wrestled with my faith, whatever the case may be. And so I know that what I went through is not just for me. I know that there's other people on the other side of this who may need to hear this, and if that's you, I hope that this message is helpful for you and just be a reminder that no matter where you are in your walk with God, like, you can still go through really painful and hard seasons as an individual, seasons that might make you question your identity or question your faith. And that's kind of just what this last year has been for me. You're completely new here and you've never been to my channel before, I'll give you like a very quick version of my testimony. I accepted the Lord for myself into my life when I was about 14 years old. I want to say 13 or 14, and then I went through a really intense up and down backsliding in that. I have a testimony video if you want to see my full testimony. Went through some pretty rough seasons, and then I rededicated my life to Christ when I was like 20, 21, somewhere around there, and have been walking with him ever since. One thing that I touched on in that testimony, and one thing that I will always stand by, is that my faith walk with the Lord has not been this linear walk. It has been so full of ups and downs. There's been so many times where I really felt like I went through things that I thought I would never go through after accepting Christ. Like, I just thought certain struggles would just be done in my life forever, and I learned over the years that that just wasn't the case. And so there's been plenty of times where I've had to kind of overcome struggles and really understand that it's a continual daily walk. This last year was kind of like this light bulb moment for me where I really had to come to terms with what my life was reflecting versus what my lips were proclaiming. In many ways, not in all ways, but in many ways, they were two different things. I had to come to terms with the fact that I was still carrying a lot of deep-seated and deep-rooted shame that was reflecting in my self-worth and the actions that flowed from that. And honestly, I really just had to come to terms with that in many ways. There were things in my life that I knew weren't aligned with God's will for my life, and I had to face the truth that I was not willing to give those things up. And because I wasn't willing to give those things up, I eventually ended up at this rock bottom kind of valley that I completely had to rebuild up from. So it was like, for years since I had gotten saved, there were little things here and there where I'd be like, you know, I know that's probably not what God wants for me, but I'm not really doing anything that bad, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And I think I just had this like very intense rock bottom revelation that who I was behind closed doors and who I was to those that maybe didn't really know me, or maybe those who followed me on social media and only saw the things that I was sharing about faith, they weren't aligned. I really believe that we're going into a season where those blurred lines and that compromised faith, it's not going to work anymore. The line in the sand is being drawn. It is thicker than ever. And you're gonna have to come to a point, and I had to come to this point where it's like, choose. It was like, okay, well, I have a decision to make. Like, what am I actually willing to give up for the sake of walking with Jesus? Am I willing to truly count the cost? You know, salvation is free, yes, but sanctification, it costs something. It costs you laying down your flesh and saying, I'm going to walk with the Spirit and I'm not going to walk in accordance with my flesh. That's a choice. Salvation is offered to us freely, and thank God for that. But to actually choose Him, to really choose Him, to make sure that the life that you live behind closed doors is no different from the life that you live forward facing to the public, that's a choice. And that's a choice that I had to realize that I hadn't fully made and committed to. Don't get me wrong, like, I was passionate and I am still passionate about sharing the things of God, about sharing my faith, but I really had to own up to the fact that I wasn't coming from a place of purity in that. I just realized that going forward from there, it's authenticity or it's nothing. It's purity or it's nothing. It's righteousness or it's nothing. And God got very serious with me to the point where I really had to look at my life, and I did. I had to count the costs and say, what is worth it? What is worth giving up to be the woman that God has called me to be the mother that God has called me to be the wife that God has called me to be? What am I willing to give up in order for us to walk in fullness in any role, whether that's mom, business owner, wife, daughter, friend, whatever that is? If we are not in alignment with who God has created us to be, we cannot walk fully and confidently in any of those other roles. All that to say, you know, going through that and coming to terms with all of that really did leave me in a place of, okay, God, search my heart and show me the truth. Show me the truth of how I've been living. Show me what I have accepted or normalized that is completely separating me from you, and show me what needs to change for me to be able to show up and walk in the fullness of who you've created me to be. And I think, and this is something that we'll get to, but I think that's questions like that, asking God to search our heart, that is one of the things that I learned. And it's a continual question because we're constantly going to be learning and growing and changing. But that is definitely one lesson that I learned out of all this, is that it's important to ask those questions and to mean it and to be willing to make the choices once you get those answers. Now I've given you sort of the backstory of things that I was wrestling with this year, but I also want to talk about what being in that place actually taught me and what I've learned, because like I said, it was a very intense year. It was a year of refining, pruning, waiting on God, getting in that posture of desperation for Him to move in my heart and move in my life. And I have seen the fruit of that now. I have seen His faithfulness, and there are so many things that I learned in that I really want to share. The first thing that I want to touch on is, number one, your obedience doesn't just affect you. There are people on the other side of you walking in obedience with who God has called you to be. There are people that are going to get to know Jesus because of your life. And not only that, your disobedience can hurt those around you. To be living in a compromised sort of life is not showing people the truth of who God is. And we're going to be accountable for the way that our lives spoke to the people around us. So your obedience doesn't just affect you, and your disobedience doesn't just hurt you, it can hurt the people around you. This is seen all throughout the Bible, right? Like, I think about, this is a story literally almost anybody knows. Even if you're not a Christian, you probably have heard the story of Jonah and the whale, right? But I was thinking about that this morning, and I was like, wow, God tells Jonah to go to this city and to tell the people about Him and to speak the truth over this land and over these people. And Jonah's like, I don't really want to do that. Like, they don't even deserve that. I'm going the other way. And of course, we know that, you know, he ends up on the boat and getting thrown overboard and going into the belly of a big fish and da 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 da. However, what I was thinking about was two things. One, when Jonah goes on the boat, when he basically runs away from God and he gets on this boat, The boat ends up going through these insanely rocky waters. There's storms all around them, and the people on the boat are asking him, like, who are you? Where did you come from? You know, what God do you serve? And Jonah tells them that basically the reason that they're all about to die on this boat is because of him, because he decided to disobey God, and now the boat is rocking and everybody's about to go overboard and everybody's going to perish because of it, which is why they threw him off. But it's like, when I thought about what that represents, it's like Jonah being disobedient didn't just almost cause the destruction of his own soul, but of everyone who was around him. They were all experiencing the consequences of Jonah's actions. And I had to look at myself and I'm like, wow, like, who may have suffered the consequences of my actions? Of making it seem like it's okay to be this wishy-washy Christian, or to have these things that happen behind closed doors that nobody really knows about. Like, who has suffered the consequences of me living like that's okay? I think about my child, I think about my family, like, what consequences could my family suffer because of my disobedience, because of my actions? And listen, when it comes to my child, I don't play. That's a big piece of this too. Like, I became a mom fall of this year feels like it's been so long, it's hard for me to even think. But I became a mom fall of last year. So this was like my first full year of motherhood too. And I think that has a lot to do with me kind of coming into these revelations. There are people on the other side of your obedience. That's the truth. Whether we want to accept it or not, that is the truth. And in that same story, it's like, not only did the people around Jonah on the boat almost die, but there was a whole nation of people, I think 120,000 people, I can't remember the exact number, but there was an entire nation of people that were missing out on the truth of who God is because Jonah didn't want to go and tell them. And when he did, people repented and were saved. The king himself humbled himself and came before God and repented because of the actions of one person. I think it's important for us all to realize, whether or not you have social media influence, or you feel like you have influence or impact in the lives of the people around you, if you have a relationship with Jesus, you have influence. Whether you feel like you do or not, you have influence. And so that was something that really just kind of shook me to my core, and I had to take a hard look at what my life was saying to other people. Second thing, and this is something that I already touched on, is that salvation is free and sanctification costs you something. To walk with God and to live with God, it costs you something. It costs who you used to be. It costs some of the things that you maybe used to do. There's a cost to the call of Jesus. And we have to be willing to ask ourselves, am I willing to lay down what does not pull me closer to God? Am I willing to truly lay it down? I think when we get real with ourselves in those questions, then we really find out where we stand and how to move forward. As I was thinking about this, and as I was thinking about what I wanted to share, one verse that came to mind that I think really represented where I was at the start of this year is Matthew 15:8, and it says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." And I really feel like I had gotten to a place in my life where I was honoring God with my lips. I knew how to say the right things, do the right things, show up in the right way. I could pray. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I didn't have a relationship with the Lord, because I did. But my heart was far from him in ways that are really important. As Christians, we are called to be set apart. We are called to be in the world, but not of the world. And I really was at this place where I was like, I can have my cake and eat it too kind of thing. Like, I could go out and still be getting drunk, doing all of these things that I just knew weren't right. And I would wake up and I would feel this shame. Like, I knew better, but I would still do these things. And I think really what God showed me, the people that he's raising up in this next season, he's raising up a pure bride. He is raising up voices that are living fully in spirit and in truth. Those are the voices that we're going to see rise up in the kingdom in this next season. And like I said, that blurred lines of, you know, she's a Christian, but she does a little bit of this and, you know, whatever, that is going to be no longer. We will have to make a choice, and God put me in that place where I had to make a choice, and I had to make some changes in my life that would reflect the choice to live for Him. The last thing and the most important thing that I really feel like I've learned through this season is that the peace and the freedom and the joy that comes from truly aligning your heart with God's heart is worth anything that you would have to give up. It sounds so much easier said than done, because I think a lot of us don't realize that we're actually in bondage to quite a lot in this world, and we just see it as so normalized because no one's really calling it out, or it doesn't seem to really hurt us that badly, that we don't realize how much in this life can actually draw us away from God. I am a living witness that the peace on the other side of that, the freedom on the other side of that, the joy on the other side of that is worth counting the cost and laying down that which draws you further from Him. I thank God that God is gracious, and that He is loving, and that He is merciful, and that we're able to come to Him in all of our messiness and all of our shame and all of our struggles, and we're able to lay it at His feet, and He's able to be there with us in that and build us up from that and cleanse us from that. But at the same time, there is accountability. We have to be accountable. I was lacking so much accountability in my walk with the Lord. I don't want to live like that anymore. I'm not living like that anymore. If you're watching this and you resonate with anything that I'm saying, if you're like, yeah, I've been in that place where I really am somebody different behind closed doors when nobody is looking than how I am in church or around my friends or around whoever, then I really want you to heed what I'm saying. And maybe it doesn't seem that deep. It's always that deep. Our lives actually do depend on it, and not just our lives, but the lives of others. You're called to be different. I shouldn't look just like everyone around me, and that's fine. I also want to say that if you are watching this and if you're listening, that I'm not saying this to condemn or to shame or anything like that, because if anyone has no room for that, it is me. If anyone has no room for judgment and condemnation and all of that, it is me. What I am saying is the time is now. We all know that this world is getting darker and darker. All you have to do is look on social media, turn on the TV, whatever it is, and you can see that things are changing. The tide is turning. God is raising up voices for the kingdom. And if you feel that call, if you feel that inside of you, that's for a reason. But the voices are going to be the authentic ones. The voices are going to be the ones that are walking in truth. I also want to say, even in that season that I was in, there were so many times where I felt so isolated and I felt so lonely. I was really questioning God and asking Him, how long do I have to be going through this? And I just want you to know that if you're in that season right now where you feel like God is really just trying to work out some things in you, but it's hard, that there's things that it's easier to say, oh, I can just let it go, than it is to actually let them go. I want you to know that God sees you in that He loves you in that He will not leave you and He will not forsake you, even when you're in the darkest valley of your life. He sees it, He gets it, He knows it. He's with you. What's on the other side, it's worth it. I hope that this video is an encouragement to you. I just want you to know that if you are walking through that rough season, or if you are in that place where you're really having to come face to face with some hard truths, that you're not alone. My DMs are always open. Feel free to message me. My email address is below too if you want to talk that way. I want you to know that God loves you so much, that your voice is needed, especially now. I truly believe that in this next year, God is going to move like we have never seen. I believe that He's preparing us. Many of you may be feeling how I'm feeling now, but I really do believe God is getting His people to a place where we are going to be prepared for everything that's to come. He is equipping us. He is raising our voices up, and I'm just so excited to walk along this journey with you guys. Love you. I hope this video encouraged you, and I will see you next time. Bye.